Hi guys, welcome to the video. Welcome to Leon Solent in the UK, also known for me as HMS Daedalus, and welcome to this beastie here. This is the Hype Performance Group, or HPG, Airbus H160 for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Now this was released about a year ago for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and it's subsequently been updated for 2024. And the first thing I'm going to say is a huge thanks to Hype Performance Group for providing me with a review copy. They've also provided me with a copy for the 145, which I may well have a look at in due course. But the object of today's video is to have a look at this. We'll have a look at the outside, the inside, take it for a flight, see what we think. And it's a fascinating aircraft because it's got quite a high level of automation, and it's a pretty cool aircraft all round anyway. But just look at it. I mean, it's fantastic, isn't it? But as I say, we're going to cast a critical eye over it, unlike those channels where they just basically show it off as a bit of glossy whatever. Those who follow my channel know that I like to have a slightly more in-depth look at things, like to be, shall we say, more critical, or view it with a more critical eye, which we will be doing with this. If you enjoy the video, please don't forget to tick like, share, subscribe. It helps me out massively with the visibility of the channel more than anything else. But also what it does is it gives me some feedback as to whether you guys enjoy it, what else I should be doing with the channel. And if you do have any suggestions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. So let's bring this over, and this is our web page of fantastic information, and we will have a look at what's going on with this. So as I say, HPG, they do the 145 and the 160, both work in 2020 and 2024, which is grand, but obviously it's the usual sales pitch. There's lots of nice shiny pictures, and then we get to our price, which is the first, I suppose, significant thing most people will be interested in. $50 near as makes no difference. So it's certainly not at the top of the price range for an aircraft. It's up there for helicopters, though, I'll be honest. But price is just an arbitrary figure. It depends on whether you're getting value for money. And someone who has no interest in helicopters, it could be $1, and it's just too much for them. Somebody who's obsessed with helicopters, it might be relatively cheap. But our interest is really whether it's value for money and whether it's a quality product. So that's more of our interest. So as I say, you get your shiny magazine sort of photos, then you get your price, and then we get into the details. Now, I've not come across the H160 before. In terms of my experience with helicopters, it's more real world than it is sim world. So I have had some stick time in an R22, Schweizer C300, I think it was. And then also when I was in the military, I managed to get some stick time in what would now be classed as a single engine Squirrel. Bit of a play on a Sea King, bit of a play on a Lynx, but this is all informal stuff as opposed to any formal training. So I've had a little bit of a play around. I am probably so far away from being qualified helicopter pilot, it's laughable. So please don't view me with a critical eye that I'm anything other than an enthusiastic simmer. But I do have some experience, albeit not a grand amount at all. I would never profess to be anything other than an enthusiast with helicopters in the sim. So 3D model, very detailed, textures, animations, etc. They'll go through that there. Advanced avionics and detailed systems. It is significant. The detailed systems are good. So we'll get a very small insight in terms of that. This is an important one for me, the first limit indication. It was a relatively new thing. I remember reading about it when I was back in the military and in all the aviation documents. The first limit indicator came in so that in effect the system worked out what your first limit was going to be, whether it be the engine temperatures, the torque, the power available from the engines. It's a very clever system, but basically it means that as a pilot you're only really worried about one needle, and the needle will be the first of whichever it starts to get to in terms of limitation. So that's a fantastic pilot aid, that is, particularly for helicopters. Online weather service via tablet, blah blah blah. The tablet is amazing in this thing. We will have a look. Great for VFR, IFR, flight, etc. I'm going to mention this down here. Well, we've got the 4-axis autopilot, beep trim, blah blah blah, AFCS, SAS, and automatic level off when approaching the ground, etc. to control to avoid CFIT. But over here we've got one thing here that for me is significant and not significant at the same time. So in terms of the helicopter's handling, it uses the native Microsoft Flight Simulator helicopter flight model. Now, it's not the greatest flight model. Let's be honest, we're not going to kid ourselves. It's not in X-Plane or DCS land. It is not the greatest flight model for helicopters. And in fact, for Microsoft Flight Simulator, that's a historical thing that goes back many years. It has been improved on 2020 and 2024. But again, as I say, for me, I don't believe it's the most accurate flight model. And the fact that they've used the native helicopter flight model kind of reinforces that with a statement. However, what they have done is they've augmented it with their proprietary AFCS and vortex ring states augmentation, which is great. And you'll find this is important because the helicopter uses a lot of stability augmentation and AFCS stuff to control it, which means actually a lot of the time you're integrated more with this than you are with this. So for me, it's important to make the distinction that they've implemented stuff that goes over the top. So if you imagine this is the lowest level of functionality of the systems. So if you've got all of your hydraulics and electrics off, this is the lowest level you get to. But as soon as you start to add in the SAS and the AFCS, you get to a much higher level, which is fundamentally what you're going to use 90% of the time. One engine inoperative and auto rotation flight condition, excellent stuff. Yeah, we don't really want to be doing helicopters in arcade mode. If we're honest, what you need to do is spend the time to learn how to operate the thing realistically. And immersive sounds, all very good. So that's the website. That's what you're going to get. A couple of honourable mentions here. Solent Airport. That's where we're flying from with this. We're going between Solent Airport and where are we looking? Just having a look on Sandown, which is on the Isle of Wight. So both of those we got from Burning Blue Designs. Huge thanks to them for their support with the channel. And also we're going to be using the Orbex Vessels UK Southeast because we're going to go and land on a carrier. It's a lovely little add-on if you want to start using helicopters in and around the south of the UK. I think they do it in other areas as well, but I just thought I'd mention it before we get into the main video. So as I say, there we go. So let's get rid of that, pop that to one side. And what we are going to do is we are going to have a look at the outside, the inside, and then when we take it for a flight, let me just get rid of that. Yeah. What we're going to do is we're going to take off from Solent. We're going to head down towards Sandown, and then we'll head across to land on a ship. It's stationary. I'm not a glutton for punishment. My helicopter flying skills aren't good enough really to do too much more than that, as you will no doubt see in the video. But this helicopter does help you out quite a lot with a lot of stuff, particularly in the cruise and stability when you're in the hover, which is excellent. But as an aside, Daedalus, I call it HMS Daedalus because for me it was. Can we go up? Yeah, we can go up. HMS Daedalus is a Royal Naval Air Station for many years, and in fact I think it used to use, coming off here, it used to use hovercrafts at one point to get onto the sea. But it's been a civilian airfield for quite some time now, but it was at the time that I came here a military airfield. I can't remember which side the wardroom was on. Whether it was that side of the airfield or that side of the airfield, but you had a look down here. I think it was over here, and it's now all housing estate. But I think it was over here, and you get a chance to look down over the sea or the estuary here, and it's a fantastic place. It was really, really nice. Lovely old buildings, full of history. Now, one of the things I mentioned with the Burning Blue Designs airfield, for some reason, whenever I try and spawn over here on helipads 1, 2 or 3, it automatically spawns me here regardless. So Burning Blue Designs, if you watch this, don't quite know why it does that, but there we go. And as I say, lovely piece of scenery here, very, very, very true to life, and it brings back a lot of memories for me. Daedalus was where they used to do the aircrew survival training out of as well. So they'd take you out on the boat, throw you in the water, and hopefully you didn't drown, etc., amongst other things. But I flew in here on a jolly with some jungly pilots in a Sea King for a couple of days, operating out of here. It's got quite a few memories for me. But now, as I say, it's a functional civilian airfield. Not quite sure what flies out of here, whether it's just general aviation or there's more to it than that. But right, let's just come down like this. Me and the cameras on this thing do not get on together. Right. So, in terms of the externals of the aircraft, really, really nice. We'll have a look at the 3D modelling, and then we'll have a look at the few of the bits in terms of textures, etc. But you can see from the outset a really nice appearance in terms of the helicopter. Very nicely 3D modelled. If we go here, just come up towards the main rotors, you can see the level of detail here in the rotor hub. Rotating swash plate, the scissor link, etc. All very, very nice. Composite blades, I'm assuming. I haven't read much into the actual H160, but when you look at the shape of the blades, remember the Burt blades coming in for which is spelt BERP, which was Burt blades that came in for the Lynx when I was in the mob in the Navy. They kind of were part of the initial development from the straight blades that we used to see to the more modern things, and composites were the real reason why we could start to do these things. But yeah, from the perspective of the Lynx, it was quite a fantastic sight to see those coming in. But as I say, 3D modelling to a very high standard. Looking at these, they haven't got flapping hinges, so I'd assume they're semi-rigid rotors, but you've got the dampers there for the fore and aft movement. Fascinating thing helicopter mechanics is. It's a bit of witchcraft. And looking at this, not quite sure in terms of pitch control. Let's see if we can get it to move. Maybe it needs the hydraulics on, I don't know. Let's come out here. There we go. So there we go. Animation in terms of pitch control. You see the rotor hub moving. Swash plate moving up and down. Does it move? It doesn't move with the stick. Maybe it needs the hydraulics. And then if we come round to the back with my dodgy camera work, we should be able to see the fenestron tail down in the bottom right here, moving as well. So I remember that from the Gazelles when they were flying down at Coldrose many years ago now, sadly. Fantastic aircraft, but the fenestron made of such a noise, really noisy. But as you can see, 3D modelled, it's got animation in terms of things like the blades and the fenestron and the gear. So it is a retractable gear undercarriage. So let's just get ourselves into bit of a walk around, and it's a beautiful looking aircraft. It's absolutely gorgeous, been modelled really nicely. As you come around here, you can see the lines, modelled to a very high standard. Really good attention to detail. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, I think this is as it's been brought over from 2020, you can't interact with anything, so you can't do a walk around where you pull things off pitot tubes, etc. But we can at least have a look around and see what it looks like. A lot of detail in terms of things like the wheels and the tyres. Very nicely modelled overall. Scissor link for the undercarriage. Tie down points as well, in case you're doing shipborne operations or you just want to tie it to something on the ground, something solid. One of the things I've noticed is if we come around here, you see the text is the wrong way around there, so it's obviously been mirrored, but really, really nicely modelled. Very nicely modelled. get an impression of the size of this thing. It's not the smallest helicopter in the world, but if we come around here, you'll see this is the right way around. So it's obviously just been mirrored. But the textures, 3D modelling, all very, very good. In fact, what we'll do, if we come in here, down onto the tablet, aircraft, crew and payload. Can we open the doors? I think we can open the doors. Equipment, storage covers. I don't know if we can actually, but we'll show the storage covers whilst we're outside. And you can see, there we go, tie downs for the rotors, etc. But very nicely modelled. Textures, as you get really close, start to lose it a little bit. Use of PBR is very nice with the gloss, etc. Yeah, not many complaints about it at all. It's very nice modelling. Gives you an impression of the size of these things. I mean, it's nothing compared to a Sea King, and I mean, they do say there's nothing in the world is perfect. I would beg to differ. The Mark 6 Sea King was the definition of perfection, but this is pretty good. Look at the detail inside the cockpit, the scratches on the plexiglass, all the circuit breakers down here. Really, really nice indeed. So yeah, let's jump in. And then we'll have a look at the inside. We'll get rid of all of those. We don't want those. Now, in terms of, it hasn't got a mission pack for the 160. The only thing you can really do is the other model, the luxury model, has floats, which this model doesn't for some reason. And this is the wire cutter. Basically, the theory is that if you are in a low-flying regime and you come across wires strung across the chasm, for example, where you are, in theory, instead of riding up the body and then taking out your rotor head and your mast, it would come up here and be cut by these wire cutters. Not sure how reliable that would be, but obviously it doesn't need them on the bottom because it's got retractable gear. Or it doesn't have them on the bottom because it's got retractable gear. But other than that, obviously at some point they're looking at changing some of this for mission-specific equipment, which then obviously leads into the missions, which we haven't got available to us at the moment. But looking at this, we're going to get rid of the crew, the payload. Sorry, I'm not really in a passenger mode today. You can choose your pilot being a hype pilot, which is... we've got a hype pilot. Let's put hype pilot in. You'll see that they don't look like the rather naff Asobo ones. They look, in terms of their clothing and outfit, they're much more appropriate to what we're doing. But we'll get rid of that. We'll fly a single crew today, and then, as I say, it always loads in with 0 fuel. So we'll put 50% fuel in. Just while I remember, just need to make sure I turn the sound back on and the recording. There we go. So there we go. So we can get an impression of clickability, etc. Equipment, gone through that. Options. This is an important one. You can have the GTN 750 by PMS50, which is, I think the free one is supported anyway. So if you get the freeware one, you can use that in this aircraft. I have the GTN XI by TDS, which is fully integrated. It should hopefully load up. I found that there is an issue that for me, for whatever reason, in order to get this in the sim, in this helicopter, I have to load in, make sure that I load in as administrator. Anything else and it's really not interested. But there we go. And then you've got the CMA 9000, which I'm not really that familiar with. And then you can change your various things like kilos, pounds, etc. And then a setup over here. A couple of things we're going to mention here. The dead zone. This is really important because the stability augmentation system in the AFCS rely on not having something trying to override them. So as soon as it detects movement, so you see down here where it's got hands on, as soon as it detects some sort of movement, it starts, the SAS, the SAS will start to fight you. So you need to be in a position where you can make sure that in the centered position, when the joystick's centered, it doesn't have any indication of hands on. Really, really important. The follow-up trim for me, you can have it as hover, cruise and both. Realistic is hover. We'll have a look at that as we go through. AFC override, realistic dual input, and then centered displace reset time. If you don't use force feedback, so if you're like me and you've got a spring controller, this is important. When you use your force release, so you press your button for force release, you'll see it flick up here when I press it. It's momentary, but I'm holding it on. I'm flying around with a helicopter, blah 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 blah. As soon as I release force release, I need to return my stick to the center position, and we can see that. We'll show it on one of the displays, but basically this is the delay time between the time that you release your force release and you need to have your stick back in the center. 2 seconds I find is a bit too long, 250 milliseconds is a bit too short, so I have it 500. Tail rotor system. This is an odd one for me for a helicopter. It's got centering springs in the tail rotor system. So unlike a lot of tail rotors where you spend a lot of time with your feet stuck on one side or the other to control the yaw, this has basically got automatic yaw, which is so cool. Then you've got your SAS stability level, your dead zones, etc. for your feet, and SAS stability level for your tail rotor. I don't mess around too much with those, but yeah, there we go. And then down here, this is the size of the text on the keyboard, which is absolutely fine. If we go back to the main menu, you'll see just how much is in the tablet. I don't intend to go all the way through it. Obviously, Flappy Bird's nice. Little nav map I've got on a separate screen, obviously. If you go into documents, it gives you the various documents. So you've got the checklists, two different colours, and then the quick start guide. There's not a massive amount of documentation for the aircraft, but you know, it is what it is. You can have failures and maintenance, so batteries charged, fire extinguishers charged, clogging the engine, that's all fine, blah 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 blah. Oil chip main gearbox chip detected. Yeah, it's something that you find in helicopters that I haven't encountered much in fixed wing, is chip detections for the gearboxes, because obviously things like your main rotor gearbox are absolutely essential to flight, and if it starts to disintegrate you need a warning, so they have chip detectors in the various gearboxes, which are quite useful really. Hype, if you want to go into sharing your information, you can either share no data online, minimal, or detailed. We'll just stay with minimal. Not quite sure what's going on here. Oh, back we go. Maps and missions. If you wanted to have maps and missions, it's there for you. As I say, I don't know much about the missions. Alarms, if it's a really long flight, you can set an alarm. Sound mixer, if you want to change the crew alerts, etc., you can do that. Website, if you wanted to browse the web whilst you're online flying along, that's fine. EFB Connect, I don't know what this is. I think EFB Connect app, so I assume it's an external thing. Flappy Birds, as I say, if it's a long and boring flight, and then Hype Radio, which I've noticed is distinct to whereabouts you are, which is kind of cool. Radio, BBC Radio Sussex. Bloop London Radio. We're close enough to London to get Wimbledon as well for the tennis, so that's kind of cool. It's a bit, you could say gimmicky, but I think it's kind of cool. If you're on a long flight, be able to listen to local radio stations, which is cool. Direction finder, if you wanted to give it a direction, find out where you need to go for something. It's all pretty cool. There's a lot to it. So yeah, it's kind of funky. I do like it. But this one is going to be one of those that we use quite a bit, and this one as well. So This is kind of, if you like, the default page for a lot of things. It gives you the option to open and close the doors. Here we go. The autopilot functionality, and then lights if you wanted to control the lights. And it's better in some respects having this up and available than starting to faff around down here. It's just a nice option for you. But certainly in terms of the automatics, you'll also see a couple of bits in here when we start to move controls around. It's pretty cool in terms of how it works. But you'll see down here it's got the manual trim release. So when I press the button and hold it, it comes up. I don't know why it disappears. Let me have a quick look at controls. That I need. Rotor trim reset settings. Set control and release delayed input repetition. Is that what I need? What happens with that? I've not had any issues with this, but I'm not quite sure why it's... maybe. Yeah, maybe that's what I need. I'll try that, see how we get on. That could be quite beneficial, really. TDS, GTN-XI, you could choose who it's linked to for your navigation source. So Copilot or Pilot. Obviously we want it as Pilot. So this is quite a useful thing, and you'll see as we fly with the SAS, this thing start to move around. So yeah, right. Let's have a look at the rest of the cockpit. We'll do a tour of the cockpit, see what we think. So in terms of 3D modelling, it's been done to a very high standard. Absolutely no complaints from me with regards to this. It looks fantastic. If we just scroll in, you can see the texturing and the 3D modelling. Very, very high standard. Use of PBR is good because you've got slightly different colouring to the, material kind of subject compared to the stick is a satin stick. This is definitely matte, and then there's other areas where it's definitely gloss, like the screens. Good reflections, good shadows. Really nicely done. Don't know why I'm getting a bit of tearing on my screen, but there we go. Very, very nice. Can we squeeze through the gap? Yes, we can. There's not a lot in here that is clickable. Oh, we can open the door though. The question is, can we close the door? Yes, we can. That's an important thing, because otherwise we're going to be flying and just making a mess of everything. But very, very nice interior. Very nicely done. Again, differences in terms of materials and PBR. Absolutely no qualms about this. Let's get back into our front seat, and then looking at the instrument panel. It's obviously a very modern panel. Absolutely cracking piece of modelling, this, with your TV displays, your multifunction displays, etc. Really, really nice. Texturing's great. Stick looks absolutely fantastic. I mean, there's more buttons on here than Space Shuttle, dare I say it. That stick is horrendous. But yeah, really, really nice. Absolutely no qualms about it. And then when you look at the depth in terms of the modelling coming right over here, really, really good. Really good indeed. Overhead. Now the overhead's quite simple on something like this. It's got FADEC engines, obviously, because of the generation we're in. But actually the overhead, if you would compare it to an older aircraft like a Sea King, for example, and there are two Sea Kings working out of Portland, actually, ex-Navy Sea Kings doing civil work out of Portland. But yeah, this is so simple, and actually the operation of the aircraft as a result is so simple, it's ridiculous. Having said that, there's a lot to go through in terms of the checklist. We won't be doing that today. We'll just be firing it up and going and seeing what we like. So yeah, so far outside is great. A couple of little pickup points, but nothing too major. The inside is great overall, and then we'll have a look, we'll fire it up and have a look at the systems. So in terms of firing it up, I'm going to come up here. I'm going to take the rotor brake off. And what we're going to do is just check a couple of things. Rotor brakes off, gear is down. We'll make sure the wheel brakes are on. Not sure if the wheel brakes are on here. Where's the wheel brake? Have we got a switch for the wheel brakes, or is it on the pedals? That's not on the pedals, is it? Maybe there's a light that comes on with the system. Don't know. And everything else here is what we would expect. So don't want to do that yet, oh, do we? You're being a bit of a buffoon here. I'll put the GPU on. Now, one of the things I've noticed, which is a real shame, but there's no noise for the GPU. So here it is, plugged in, and we still also get the bing bings, even though we're outside the cockpit. But I think that's probably a Microsoft Flight Simulator thing. Blades turning in the wind, lovely, lovely effect, because obviously we haven't powered anything up yet. Right, back in, bling bling, bling bling, all the modern alerts. We'll just have a look at a few bits whilst we're here then. So, you've obviously got your 4 multifunction displays. This one doesn't fire up when you've only got the electrics and you haven't got the generators up, which is fine. But this one here is quite a significant one, so let's just go like that. This one is kind of all your systems really, or predominantly most of your systems in one page. So this is kind of your home page if you want. Across the top here you've got your various different pages that you can go into, or your various different headers. So this is the flight and navigation display, navigation display D, which I think is digital, vehicle management system, digital map. So this is just the map. This is your navigation display, which is why you can see down here you've got things like your FMS, etc. Miscellaneous, which in this case is just really a sort of tail cam. Don't quite know what that's just a contrast, isn't it? But that's just a tail camera, and then obviously the buttons down the side and across the bottom are context dependent. So if I go back into systems, you'll see we come up with the systems in terms of what's on and what's working. Whatever this page is, I can't remember what this page is called, the RCDR. But yeah, hydraulics. We do have hydraulics in this helicopter to help us out. Fuel system, we've got 50% fuel. Controls. This page I'll probably leave up, because if you imagine, because of the way the controls work, you can end up in a situation where the yellow input, which is your input, when you center everything, so you do your force trim, you force trim, force trim, force trim, and then you release it. What you'll find is this box will move, because this is in effect where your trim is. The yellow is where your stick is, so it doesn't necessarily correspond. We will notice that later, but you'll also notice that when you're fighting against the spring, it comes up with a spring override here. So you can override the SAS. You can always override the SAS. Whether it disengages or not, I don't remember. But you'll see across here the color codes, user input, sim output. So this is what it's doing with the helicopter. So this is what you're putting in, but this is what it's actually doing with the helicopter. And then the SAS and the SENA or SENA. This is kind of a system that does the small adjustments within the system on the AFCS. And this is a stability augmentation system. But we'll potentially be able to see that during the flight. And then across here we've got the transmission, which will show you what's happening in terms of what's driving what with the main gearbox, tail rotor gearbox, and then your main and secondary transmission boxes on the engines, and then finally your electrical system, which you'll see we just powered off the GPU at the moment, giving us all the lovely greenness that we want. But that's really that in a nutshell. Moving across to the flight navigation display, it's kind of an all-in-one pocket rocket of a display with your warnings beneath, your CWP, your cautionary warnings down here as well. Coming around the rest of the cockpit, down here we've got a lot of the sort of, if you like, in-flight systems. So we've got the usual things of floats, wipers, etc. HTORs for your terrain awareness system, nose wheel. When you're landing on something like a ship, which is quite a dynamic place to land, with most helicopters, you'll land with your landing gear with your brakes on and your nose wheel locked, so that you don't spin around like a spinning top as the boat moves. Landing gear, undercarriage, your standby instruments down here. I'm not quite sure what all this is. I think this might be in relation to role-specific stuff, but that's something to come back to maybe at a later date. Your SAS and your trims here. You can fly with it on minimum stuff, so with all this off, but it just makes it harder. And then your auto flight controls down here. ECS, your 2 GTNs. As I say, I've got the GTN XI. You can use it with the PMS 50, but I don't know if you can use it with the full product or just the freebie version or the freeware. For some reason, this radio is always on. When you go into cold and dark, so you can choose cold and dark, it leaves certain things in the last known position. So it left the anti-cols on, the what's this one? The signs on, the emergency exit it didn't. This it leaves on for some reason. Your FM transceiver, and then you've got your radar down here, which will just pop to off for the moment. In fact, we can actually pop it to standby whilst we've got power on the aircraft. In terms of starting the aircraft, just making sure a couple of things are okay. So make sure your lever is fully down. You can wiggle the sticks as much as you wish. Bling, bling, bling. Yeah. We've got all the bling blings. That's great. So just going to go back to the vehicle system, which is system page. Is that it? No. Hydraulic, fuel, transmission, electricals. Here we go, previous. So just going to go down to here, ready for startup. And let's just check a couple of things. So as I say, gears down. I believe that the brakes are on, collectives down. And then all we're going to do is come up here and it's FADEC. So it's absolutely dead easy to do this. Click it down once, it goes to idle and it will automatically start up. And you can see as we come down here, got our first engine indications coming up. Automatically starts itself off. Fuel flow. And you can see we've got a nice duplication up here in terms of the engine instruments. And it's powering up. So you've got your torque, your N1, your temperature. I'm not quite sure what TOT is. I'm assuming it's turbine outlet temperature. And you can see we're up and running. And this is nice. This top one here is kind of your endurance. So it tells you your endurance at that fuel flow. Really, really nice. Combined engine instrumentation down here. They've done the instrumentation, etc. really, really well. Just put that one through to flight. Automatically closes the latch, and we'll put the generator on as well. And then if we come down here, we can have a look and see that the generator 2 is on. Batteries 1 and 2 are on. Engine is exactly where we want it to be at the minute. It's into the high idle position, ready for flight. And then we're going to start 2. What we will do is take the DC GPU off. N1. Oil pressure's up, engine oil temperature's increasing. Get the indication that it's in idle. And it's low idle, it's 61.6%. Bring it fully up. Temperature's coming up again. and then coming across here, FMS 1 and 2 on, Radalt 1 and 2 on. Just check there's nothing untoward here.
Audio test.
Just have a look at the lamps. That's fine. Obviously you generally do that much earlier than I've done it. Make sure the emergency generator is on. Get a bling bling to tell us it's not. That gen needs to go on as well. All of this is fine. This is if you wanted to do a manual start, you could do a manual start. All looking grand. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn around to the right, and you'll notice that on here it's going to come up with that. It also comes up with the trim here, so trim override, trim release, and that's because at the moment I've got the trim release. I'd suggest holding trim release when you're taking off and landing. Gives you finer control. And once you've stopped doing press ups, so if I now release it, you can see that it's pretty stable. I can trim it out using the trim button. Just bring it round to the right. I can overpower it with my controls if I wish. I'm doing a few press ups with the cyclic, with a collective, sorry. But I can overpower it. I can take control. The system will then reset to whatever position I've set it to. So if I do it into a right hand turn and let go, it will just start to turn right now. And then if I manually bring it back, and then, or I can just fly it around with my trim release. And wherever I leave my trim release is where the new position of the aircraft is. You see there I'm fighting the SAS because I didn't have my trim release depressed. It's very, very responsive. It's also not trimmed out properly. It's like having an ice puck going around on an ice rink, isn't it? Right, let's get out of here. It's a very good system. Just ignore everything and just come out over here. And as we come out over here, make sure we've got plenty of power. Now if you remember what I said was about this box down here, the yellow dot down here is my controls. They're currently centered. I'm not doing anything with them. And then this is where the aircraft thinks the controls are. Whilst we're here, I'm just going to quickly pop the autopilot on so we don't smash into the ground. But as I say, so this is where it thinks the controls are. This small box is indicating sort of where I've got a limited amount of control before it kicks off. So I can just tweak it around a little bit in that box, and if I do so, it will return to wherever the default position is. Now there's two speed bands in this aircraft. There's kind of above 30 knots and there's below 30 knots. Above 30 knots it's basically completely stable, so if I tilt it that way, it will recover to whatever attitude it was disturbed from, like that. Below 30 knots it will maintain the position, so below 30 knots if I did that and let go, it will just hold that position. Above 30 knots, if I do that and let go, it regains my position. So it's a very clever system. We'll just put the interrupt the pitch trim, bring it round this way, and come back to where we want to be, which is heading over that way. We also don't really want to be going that fast. And then if we trim, it will trim with finesse where we're going. Bit of a burp there, but it's a very powerful system in terms of what you can use it for. So it's completely stable now. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come down here, and I'm going to this control down here allows you to set a lot, but what I'm going to do is come down here and just where's my heading gone? Here it is. Plug the heading in, so rotate it, pop it on, and that's us now with our heading guidance as well. What we're doing, 100 knots, that's fine. If we just you can also control your speed as well, so if I come down here to my speed, indicated airspeed, so what speed have we got at the minute? We've got 80. I'm just going to spin that up a bit to 100, press the button, and it should try and get us to 100. And we'll see the trend line increase here. The power's gone up to make sure we can do it. You can see the pitch has changed as well here. That should accelerate us to 100 and hold us at 100. So all told, the automatic flight control system's really good. So we're coming over here to Sandown. Let's bring ourselves around to the left. And then what we'll do is we'll try and do a quick approach and landing at Sandown. But the automatics on this thing are really good. And as I say, this is probably the indicator as to what's happening, the best indicator as to what's happening. Allied to this, so you can see over here, we've got it set as a barometric altitude hold. We could do it as height, which is your height above the ground, so your rad alt basically. And then basically you can change it to vertical speed heading. This is your ground speed for hover. Automatic hover mode should you wish to implement it, go around and so on and so forth. So this is a really useful panel. And then if you bring this down, it shows you can click here, so if you wanted to increase your indicated airspeed, you can do that. Just such a good system. And then we're steering off GPS. It's relatively intuitive. I say relatively because I can always make a mess of things, as is my want, but let me see if we can just get ourselves up a bit in terms of altitude. In fact, what am I doing that? Because we're only down at about 500 feet, so we'll get a climb going to 800 feet. Now this in effect is replacing this, so it's not putting anything in that's not in the aircraft, it's just making it easier so that you can do it heads up. And then heading, just come around to the left a bit. And as I said, bring this over. This is Sandown here. So we're already halfway to Sandown. I deliberately chose a really short route. But we're going to shoot an approach at Sandown, see how we get on. I'm always awful at judging where we need to be in relation to a stopping point. So it's one thing coming down and approaching an airfield and stopping anywhere along the runway, but trying to stop on a fixed point I find very difficult with this helicopter. It might actually be easier in VR. I used to fly the Bell 407 in X-Plane in VR, and it was so much easier to operate in VR compared to with a head tracker or even no head tracker at all. But we'll try and see how we get on with that, and then I'm going to go out to the carrier and we'll see what happens with that. So let's bring this over here, get rid of that, and we'll take over manual control. So let's see if my button is going to take those autopilot modes off. Yeah. So that works, that's fine. Now where it gets wobbly, it's where I've forgotten to, right, there's the airfield. Out on the right 1 o'clock. We're high. But I don't want 1,000 feet a minute rate of descent in a helicopter. Let's see how we get on. That rate of descent's too high. Airspeed's 60, so we're still okay with that. And the concentration, the beads of sweat dripping off my forehead now. I'm going to try and bring it into the near end of the runway, pretty much where the numbers are. And we're looking okay at the minute. Let's bring the speed back. We're perilously close to Vortex Ring, although I haven't got it enabled, but it does come up with the warnings if it thinks you're going to get into Vortex Ring. We've slowed down too quickly, so we need to get some forward momentum back, otherwise we're just going to be in a high hover. As I say, I'm not really that great with this helicopter yet. Although you could argue with any helicopter, to be honest. Now we're going too fast. Bring the speed back. Our rate of descent, I feel, is too high. We're nowhere near the centre line, are we? I'm trying to look to the far end of the runway to try and get my hover references, but I'm doing an awful job. Let's see if we can bring it down on the 2.3. That's a very high hover. It's not a great hover, to be honest, is it? It's also not great positioning. Come on, Richard, you can do better than this. You can do better than this, buddy. Oh, don't go backwards. And don't over control either. So we're down here on the numbers where I wanted to be. Took a bit of doing though, to be fair, as my brain power was running out there. But this is, as I say, this is Sandown by Burning Blue Designs. Very nice. I love the downdraft effect on the grass. Although it seems to be travelling out rather a long way. Here we go. Looking gorgeous, isn't she? Right, better clear the runway and we'll go and play with the carrier. So again, pressing the trim release, so you see it down here with the yellow lights, and you'll also see it here. Pressing the button, trim release. Right, release the trim release. I didn't get the controls centered again quickly enough. Maybe the 500 milliseconds would be better for me. Right, let's get out of here. And let's get down towards where this carrier is. Put the gear up. Oh, looking down. And we want heading of about east. And I'll trudge out towards the carrier, and I'll see you when we get there. Okay, so you see we've got the carrier group on the nose, about 4 miles away, 3 miles away maybe. Let me just check that that's doing what it should be doing. Yes, it is. So what I need to do now is I need to think about slowing down and going down. So the first thing we'll do is we'll bring the speed back. And you can see if I bring this bug back below the visible area, what will happen is it will go from green to yellow. So I'm going to bring it all the way back. We're going to slow down to 100 knots. You see how it's gone yellow up here? And the bug will be yellow as well. Bring that down to 100 knots, and then we'll also bring the altitude down. We don't really want to be at 1200 feet. What have I taken my speed down to, I wonder? Let's just take it down to 90 knots, which is about the closing speed of a Sea King to start with anyway. We'll come down to about 700 feet. Let the automatics do their funky thing. We'll just bring it around a bit to the left, and then we'll try and go hands on when I feel that we're in a better position, so that I can try and do some sort of carrier landing. And what we'll do is we'll let the automatics do their work. As I say, this thing can do a coupled ILS, so I assume it would be a Cat 1 down to 200 feet. But as we're coming in now, the picture starts to look a little bit high. Now, I've got to remember that this thing's 70 odd feet above the height of the waves, although we haven't got any waves today. So we'll bring this down to about 600, and we'll bring the speed back to 80. And then as we get closer, we'll start to think about taking control ourselves. And in theory, if I press the correct button in the correct direction, we'll get control. That looks like it's done it. Yeah, we're very high and very close in, unfortunately. And my collective, because the automatics was far too high to start with. So as soon as I've taken it out, my collective's gone, well, you don't want to be that high. So we'll just distance ourselves out a little bit.
Terrain ahead. Pull up.
So we'll just reposition ourselves. We don't want to be going into a hover, really. Let's get ourselves a bit
500.
of a flying attitude as opposed to a hovering attitude. A slow rate of descent, and see where we're at. Problem with the milky glassy seas, you've got no idea what altitude you're at. There we go. Right, let's just exercise the old brain cells and let them fall out of their respective pockets as we try and do something that's vaguely landing-like on this huge, great deck. It's warning about vortex. Let's just get a little bit of forward speed. And we'll come a bit closer into the carrier. Said he. I tell you what, landing on ships is not my forte. Trying to relax everything that I've got. I'm trying to use the external references of the horizon as opposed to looking at the boat. That's not great. That's not great. That's not great. Come on, Ricardo, you can do this. Don't want to hit the superstructure. I feel I'm not doing myself any favours here. Might be over controlling it a little bit too much. See if we can get some sort of semblance of control over this beastie. Right, here we go. I feel a little bit more comfortable with this now. Let's just try and bring it a little bit forwards to spot 2. I think this might be me just trying a little bit too hard. Gently down, just cushion it a little bit. Well, I'm close enough for government work. Right, let's have a little think about this this beastie here. What we'll do is we'll make sure everything's fine and hunky-dory. Will this turn off? I don't know why, but this is turned on for some unknown reason during the flight. I'm not entirely sure why it turned on, but never mind, eh? So what we'll do is we'll turn stuff off. We'll just do it so that we can get nice and quiet, and then we can have a quick chat about it. Let me come across here. No, don't want any of that. Let it do its magic. Don't want any of that. Don't want any of that. And then everything's going to slow down. And then we'll go outside, we'll have a look at the aircraft whilst we have a think about what's just gone on. So, let's just go out here. Hopefully we don't fall into the sea. So, the outside model of this thing is gorgeous. There's a few pickup points, some where the textures, for example, come in, but nothing too amazing. The use of PBR is absolutely superb. Animation's really, really good. We didn't really have a look at the animation of the gear, but it is really good. Obviously, we can't click everything on the outside, so it's not without flaws, but it is absolutely gorgeous to look at. I mean, that beastie is fantastic. And again, likewise, animations for the rotor blades and things like that. Really, really nicely done. Really nicely done. So absolutely no qualms about that. A couple of little pickups, as I say, the other side where it's got the text the wrong way around, but nothing too major at all. Nothing too major at all. Inside, 3D modelling is really, really nice. Textures also really, really nice. Sounds, again, very, very nice. There's not too much behind you that you need to worry about in terms of clicking stuff and mucking around with stuff. So really it comes down to the flight dynamics. Well, the flight dynamics are they're pretty good, to be honest. They're okay. Having said that, that's primarily because it's using the native Microsoft Flight Simulator flight dynamics, which is what it says in the bump. However, what it also does do is it utilizes its own SAS and AFCS, which it does very well. The other thing I really, really like is the use of the tablet. This is probably the most comprehensive and usable tablet I've found in any sim aircraft in the sim. It's absolutely fantastic, and once you combine it with the TDS GTN XI, something like that, it becomes really, really potent as a tool overall. So if you remove the poor handling on my accounts in terms of flying this thing around, it's just fantastic. Now, what I would like to do is I'd like to have a look at it in VR. The reason being is that in 2D and even in head tracking, you don't get any information about depth. The other thing I'd like to do is I'd like to try it with a force feedback stick, because of the way helicopter sticks are and how they work with the trim, etc. This is a really, really good compromise for someone who's got a spring stick. But I've taken delivery of a force feedback stick, which I've saved lots and lots and lots of pennies to get. I figured that if I wanted to do more helicopter flying, it'd be something that would improve my flying. So what I would say is that in terms of how they've implemented the SAS and the force trim release, they've done a really nice job with it. I think it's a wonderful implementation of it. I think they've done a really good job with the automatics in terms of this. And as I say, the amount that you can do with just the tablet is fantastic. So overall, I think it's really nice. I think it's worth the money. As I say, huge thanks to Burning Blue Designs for the scenery, and although they haven't sponsored it or anything like that, Orbex, I think their vessels on the southwest is really good as well. So this is just an example of it with the aircraft carrier. There's lots of variety of vessels, but as I say, fundamentally this video was about the aircraft, and the aircraft is absolutely fantastic. So hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe. As I say, it makes a massive difference to the smaller YouTubers such as myself who haven't got 150, 200,000 subscribers. It does make a massive difference, disproportionately large difference, I should say. But anyway, take care, guys. I'll see you in the next one.